So we have started hybrid framework and we have been going through the development of framework. And as part of that, we have completed step by step, like we have created first step, we created account registration test case and we added logs to our test case using log4j, log4j2. And we have run the tests on the desired browser, cross browser, and also have seen how to run parallel tests using TestNG. And then we created config.properties file to have the common properties that can be used for the application. And then we even created a new test case, login test case. And for that, whatever is required, page object classes, we created them and the necessary updates we made to the existing classes, right? And we have created the login test case and ran it from the TestNG XML. I, I don't remember if we created TestNG XML. Yeah, we definitely need to create TestNG XML because we parameterize some things on the to run on the desired browser. So yeah, I think we created the TestNG XML as well and we ran. So this is what we completed till the last session. So we'll continue now to the next step. So we'll pick up the next step, data-driven login test. So the login test, what we did in the last session was like, so if you see login test, let me open the login test case. So this is the login test case. And what did we do? Like we just, you know, clicked on the account login link and then we provided email address and password, right? So email and password, if you observe, we are reading it from the properties file, p.get property. What is p? So if you observe properties, right? So p equal to new properties and we are loading the file. What is the file? So if you observe, the file is config.properties file. So what do we have in the config.properties? We have some common things, right? So where we think like this can change. So that things we actually, that properties we have put it in the config.properties. And from here we had email and password. So we are using email and password from config.properties and passing it to our test case, which is our this one login test, right? So from this we have read email and password, and as those were valid ones, so the login was successful, right? So this is what we have seen now. So we'll see more test data. So when you're actually testing login, right, login page, so there could be multiple combinations, right? So that there could be username could be valid, password could be invalid, and vice versa. And also both username and password could be invalid, right? So all these kind of combinations, which we call it as test data, has to be covered when we are testing the login page, right? So how we can actually validate the same test with multiple data. So here it was single data. We actually it's almost like hard coding thing, right? Instead of this, I can directly replace the email from config.properties, right? So it's like hard code, right? We didn't hard code it. We are reading for from config.properties. And also even with the config.properties, what the issue is. So if I wanted to check with another test data, I just need to modify this, right? And then run it for the second set of test data. Like that, if I have some 4 or 5 sets of data, say for example, 10 sets of test data I have for the login form. So in that case, I have to modify this email and password 10 times and run it 10 times. It's a manual effort, right? So instead of that, we have to maintain. So this is where data-driven test comes into place. So where we maintain the test data in some Excel or XML file and read that file and pass it on to the data provider. So this from the data provider, our test case will read the test data and for each input, it will actually pass the email and password and then it will try for the login test, right? So that is what we wanted to do now, as we have multiple test data. So what data we have? Multiple test data for test login. So let's see that. So whatever test data we have, we usually put it in the test data folder. So we have test data folder here, right? So we'll put it here and you can see this is our test data for login page. So if you observe, the first one is valid. We even had that in our config.properties valid one, right? So then I had some invalid ones as well. So Yeah, so this is the username and this is the password. You can even call this as email if you want. So these are the different combinations we have. And you can see this is the result. So this is the result we are expecting, right? So this is the result we are expecting. And you can see, yeah, so different usernames and passwords and the result we are expecting. Now what we are gonna do is we are gonna read this XML file, sorry, Excel file, right? So this is Excel file. So we are gonna read this Excel file and then get this data into a data provider, and then from there, like, we'll read it into a test case and pass the data to the test case, which actually picks up each input from this test data and runs it for and runs the test case, right? So this is our test data. So let me keep it open. Okay, if it is open, right, it might not be like, so when you are running, it says that the file is in use. So let me close it. Whenever required, we'll open it. Now, how do we actually parameterize it? We wanted to parameterize it, right? So instead of modifying the existing case, so we'll take this as a different test case altogether, right? So we'll call this as a different test case. So let me create a new test case. I'll call this test case as test case 3. And this is login test data driven. Login data driven test. And here, so anyway, we are going to have the same one, verify login only. So we'll have this copied onto here. So what things we wanted to change? So it has to actually extend the base class, right? It has to extend the base class. So the only part we wanted to change is like how it actually reads the email and password, right? So if you go back, so these steps are very important. It actually says you what to perform and in what order we need to perform each step, right? So this is very important when you are designing, when you are developing a framework. So prepare test data in Excel. Place the Excel file inside the com.opencart test data folder. Yes, we did that. No, this is just a folder, right? It is not a package. It is only folder, right? Test data folder. Then create Excel utility class under. So I think, yeah, we created this login test data. So before that, we need to create the Excel utility class under com.opencart.utilities package. So let's follow this document. So I have created this test case. So which is the fifth step in it. That's fine. But let's actually follow this document. So that's a good practice, right? So create Excel utility class under utilities package. So under utilities package, we need to create the Excel utility. So I already have the Excel utility. So if you remember, even we were using this Excel utility when we are working with data driven test, right? So even extend reports also. So let's put this under where open com.opencart.utilities package. So if you see, there's a utilities package. I'm placing my Excel utility here. So if you open this Excel utility, we have many methods here. So which we can use it to read data from Excel. So get right row count. When you pass the sheet name, so it actually gives us the row count. Then get cell count. Get cell count gives us the, so cell actually belongs to one row, right? So when you pass sheet and row number, so it actually gives you the cell count. Get cell data. It actually gives you the cell data as well. Set cell data. We can write something into the Excel sheet. We can fill the colors accordingly, right? So this is what we have already seen. So I just copied the same file here, Excel utility, right? Excel utility file, which we'll use it to read data from Excel sheet. So second step is done. Then update page object class, my account page, add logout link. So why we need to log out? So if you go back to the application, so if I log in with, say for example, like this, so if it is successful login, valid login, then how do we actually do the second one, login? So it will be the same test, right? Test data. So if it is data driven test, it will be the same test. So running multiple times with the second set of data. So how can we test with second set of data? So we need to log out. So we'll log out. We'll log out and we'll navigate to the URL again, and then we'll do the login like this. So for that, so we need to log out definitely, right? So we need to capture the logout link here. So after logging it, you can either choose my account logout or simply you can log out here directly. We have the web element logout here. So we need to modify our my account page because this is my account page, right? So if you observe, this is my account page once we log in. So we have even validated on this label my account, right? So we need to actually modify my account page and add the logout link. So how do we add the logout link? First go to my account page and add the logout link. I think we already added it in the last session, right? So when we are adding the my account right label, we also added the logout link as well. See, we already have it. Add the logout link and also had the corresponding method for it. So that in the test case, we can just, we will create the object for my account page and we'll call the click logout method, right? So that's how we actually log out from the application. So even this step is done. Then next, create data providers class in open.utilities package to maintain data providers for data-driven tests. So we'll create a class which is called data providers. And whenever any test case requires test data, that is like when we are having a data-driven test in our test cases. So what we'll do is we'll add the data in the data providers class. So let's create one data providers class. Then you'll come to know what I mean by that. So let me create a data providers class under com.opencart.utilities package. So we have utilities package where we have Excel utility already. So I'm going to create new class. We'll call it as data providers. So this is my data providers class where we'll actually provide the data, right? So how do we actually provide the data? So let's go through this. TestNG annotations, import it from TestNG annotations. So this way, if you remember, we had discussed during TestNG, right? So when we are discussing TestNG features, we have gone through the about data providers as well, right? So if you see here, this is a method. Data providers is a class, and we have a method called get data, and which is returning two-dimensional array, right? So the first one represents row and the second represents column. Now, observe. So where we are reading the data from. So dot indicates the current base directory, right? So the base directory will be the project, right? Under the project. So look for test data folder, and under it, I have this Excel is what we are seeing. Yes, we do have it, right? Test data login. And then Excel SXY. This is Excel utility. Then we are creating an object for Excel utility, right? So we create an Excel utility and we pass the path to it, right? So we have Excel utility package. So we have an object for this Excel utility, right? And we are getting the rows and columns. We are getting the total rows and total columns. Why we need total rows and columns? We wanted to create a two-dimensional array. So that, you know, we are gonna return the data within the Excel sheet, right? So for that, we need to allocate memory. So how do you know like how much memory this it is gonna return? So we can know it by the number of rows and columns. So if you see here, we created two-dimensional array with total rows and total columns. So how did we get the total rows? So we have a method in the Excel utility called get row count. So which returns the row number, like how many rows it has. So it returns that number. So that number of rows we captured into total rows and get cell count of sheet 1, comma 1, right? So we are actually getting the first row. So any row you can pass, right? So any row you can pass and you can get the count for the cell. You can get the cell count, right? So we are just passing first row and you can see total columns. We can get the total columns like that. And yeah, and how are we getting this? So if you see Excel utility is a object where we pass the path to it. And if you see here, Excel utility, this is the Excel utility we just created, and we pass the path. So this dot path, it has a path variable. So it has been initialized. Now, when we say get row count, right, and we pass the sheet name, so this code will be executed and it will return the row count. So that's how you get the row count. Same applies for the cell count as well. When we pass sheet name and row number, so it returns the cell count. So that's how you get the row count and total count. And we are initializing that number of rows and total columns. And so why we need this? We are actually allocating total number of rows and total number of columns that we require. And we are creating a login data object, double dimensional, two-dimensional array, right? Which can store the data, user and password. All right. So now a typical for loop to read the Excel sheet, right? So two for loops. Outer for loop is used for reading the rows and the inner for loop is used to read the columns, right? So we'll read it like this. So we'll start it with 1 until the all the rows is the outer for loop, and inner for loop we'll start it for 0 and till all the columns are read, right? So now if you see here, so 0, I is rows, J is column. I index represents rows, J represents column. J is the inner for loop, right? Now, executil dot get cell data. We wanted to read the data. So we are calling a method called get cell data, which actually accepts sheet, row, and column, right? Sheet num. So if you see sheet name, row num, and column number. So if you pass all this, then it will actually send us or return us the data for that particular cell. So that's how we call it in the for loop, inner for loop, for all the columns, for all the cells for a particular row, right? So once we read all this, so you can see here like how we are storing it, right? Get cell data of I comma 0, 1 comma 0, and I minus 1. So login data, it's an array, right? So though we are starting row with 1, so login data is 0 base, index base, right? It starts from 0. So 0 of 0. We have to place it in as 0 of 0. And then 0 of 1, 0 of 2, like that. So for the first row, all the records will read, right? And for the second row, so it will be 1, 1. So this will be 1, right? Second, for the next row, this will be 2, like that. And the second array actually is used for columns, right? So that is what we mean by two-dimensional array, right? So this is nothing new for us. So just go through it again. This is how you read the data from the entire sheet, from the entire Excel sheet. So this for loop is meant for cell data, reading cell data for one row, right? Like this, we have one for loop itself on top of it, which is used for all the rows, right? So it starts with 1 till all the rows are completed. And for each row, so we have another for loop, which actually is used to read the cell data for each row, right? So this is the code for it. And with this, what happens? This login data. So once we are done with all the rows, right? So this login data object will have the data read from this Excel sheet, right? So this is the Excel sheet we had, and this is the login test cases, right? Now, yeah, we are creating the data providers class to read the data, right? So once we get the login data, right? So that is written. So this is data provider. It has to return the data. So this is what it is returning. So we need to mention this method as the data provider. So at the rate data provider is the annotation we use, and we have to provide some name to it. So I'm providing the name as login data, right? So each data provider will have a method name and a name data provider name on top of it, right? So that we can refer this name to the test case. When we are writing a test case where we wanted to read the data from the data provider, so we'll use this name. So that test case can directly read the data from this data provider, particular data provider. So this is the name of the data provider. This is name of the method. So you should not get confused. There are two things, right? So we will not call the method name. So when we are actually writing the test case for data-driven testing, we will actually say data provider and refer data provider with name login data is what we'll say. So that, when we say that, so this login data, which is a two-dimensional array, will be returned onto the test case. We'll see that now. So if you see here, create data providers class in opencart.release package to maintain data providers for data-driven tests. All right, so this we did, right? And like in future, like if you wanted to automate more number of test cases, and if you feel like you wanted to add the test data for you need like you had if you feel like you wanted to pass more test data for your test cases, then you can add more number of data providers here. You can simply provide like this. You can create one method, new method. You can call it, you can name it some, you can name the method, and then on top of it, you'll write at the rate data provider annotation, and again, you'll provide some name to it. Like this, we can create a number of data provider methods here in this class, which is mainly meant for data providers, right? So we created this class for that purpose, for having test data rate for different test cases. So we have created this data provider class. So we can maintain all the data provider, all the test data for all the test cases, which like we are reading from Excel. So we can maintain in this class file, right? Data provider. For now, we created the data, like we read the data for the login test case, right? All right. So this is done. Now let's go back to the document. And what does it say? Create login data driven test under test cases package. Yeah, we already created it. So if you see here, this is the, so we created a new test case and we just copied the test case 2 here, right? So this won't be sufficient, right? We have to make some changes to it. So we are reading the data set email and password from config.properties. So we wanted to read this from our test data or our data provider. So how do we do that? So let's see that. So we already have the data provider, right? So on top of our test method, so our method name, so this is verify login, right? So let's also rename this. So I'll just name it as login data driven, or I'll just name it as DDT, data driven test, right? So in the test, what we do is we'll just say data provider equal to, we have to provide the name of the data provider, right? And also remember, we need to provide the class name, in which class this is present. This could be present in any other package, in any other folder, right? Any folder. But how do we know that? So we need to specify the class as well. So data provider class equal to, then we need to specify the data provider that class and import this data providers class from open com.opencard.utilities package. So we are specifying this method, right? Verify login method. So use this data provider is what we are saying. So which data provider? So we are naming it login data. So if you go back to the data providers, we named it as login data, this method. So we are telling our test case method to actually read the data from the data provider with name login data. So that's what this represents. And the second parameter is saying, so where to find for this data provider, it doesn't know, right? So we are saying data provider class equal to, so the class name which you need to find this data provider is data providers dot class is what we are saying. So that this method will know. So it has to go into this data providers dot class. Yes, it goes to data providers class. And this could have multiple data providers, data provider 1, data provider 2, 3, 4, and so on, right? So how does it know which method it has to call? So that is the reason we have specified data provider equal to login data. So that it will directly jump onto a method which has the data provider name as login data and will read the data from that method, right? So once it reads the data, so it has the data now, right? So now we need to, so this login data, actually, when we call this like this, so this, what it does, so it returns this login data, right? Login data object. So this, we need to actually read it into the method. So how do we read it? So if you see here, let me open the Excel again. So if you see here, we had like 6 rows, right? So even you should count this row, 6 rows and 3 columns, right? So 3 cells, right? So first one is string, email, password, and then expected, what expected value. So the result, right? The result what we are expecting, either it is valid or invalid, right? So once we run this, right? So this test annotation indicates that TestNG has to pick it up for running this as a test, and data provider equal to login data. So with this, it will know which. So this actually will be called first data provider start class, and within it login data. So which method has the name as data provider login data will be uh, found and then identified, and then the login data will be written from that data provider. So that will be captured into this verify login uh, data driven test. And for each input, so we will be having 6 rows, right? So this method will be run 6 times. It is almost you can relate it to like an enhanced for loop. So for each input, though we are not writing any loop here, so it understands that for all the login data, that number of total rows, so it has to run that number of times is what it will know. It will know, and it will run that number of times, right? So this will run for 5 times because we started with one year, right? So it will run for uh, 5 times, right? So this will run, this method will run for 5 times. So nothing will change except like this email and password. So this one, this part will be set email, and this will be the password. We'll read it from the test data, right? So this is what we'll do. And one thing we'll do is like, how do we validate it? This is a test case, right? So we wanted to validate it. So how do we validate? Is my account page exists? This is fine. And then we wanted to assert. So like we can't assert it with the target page like how we did earlier, right? So we can do that, but how about like for the failed test case, right? So there could be multiple combinations here. For example, so we are testing login, right? So this login might be having different possibilities. So this is login with if it is valid credentials, right? So, and we are expecting valid. So this has to be passed. For example, so this is login test we are doing, and the result might be the valid one. That is, it is successful. Let me put it as successful. So login, if it is successful and if it is valid, right? So then we'll call it as pass. And if so, this has to come here. So if it is valid and if it is successful, then we call it as pass, right? So we call it as pass. Say for example, for same login, valid, if it is valid, so what I mean by valid is if the expectation, if the result is valid, right? Expected result is valid, and if it is failed, right? Then what do we say? We say that test case is failed, right? So in the same way, we do have other two combinations, like right. So login. So if the expectation is invalid, right? But if it is successful, right? Successful in the sense valid. So it enters into the my account page. So then it has to say the test case has failed. Simple logic, right? So login, if it is invalid, so the expectation is invalid. But if it is failed, right? So then we say that it is passed. Right? So if it is invalid, right? So the test case has to be fail. Fail in the sense it should not go into the my account page, right? So if it will not go into the my account page. So that is what we are expecting. So when we are actually when we wanted to test the negative case, right? So what we'll do, we'll say that negative. We'll say that the expected result is invalid, right? So which has to match with the expected value invalid, and the test case is fail. So failing is like we don't actually log in into the my account page. So the test case will be fail. So in that case, we should mark it as pass because our expectation itself is test case has to fail because we passed the invalid credentials, right? So in the same way, like if you pass the invalid credentials, but if your login is successful, so that is not we are expecting, right? So if you are passing invalid credential and if it is successful, then we have to mark the test case as failure because that is not we are expecting. So this is what we are expecting. If we pass the invalid credentials, it has to fail, right? But it is it is fail, right? So if we are expecting, if we are passing invalid credentials, it has to fail, and if it fails, then that is according to our expectation. Then we'll accept that test case as true, or we'll just say it as pass. If the login credentials are invalid, but still you are able to log in successfully, right? So then that is not what we are expecting, right? Then we'll mark the test case as failure. So the same applies here, right? So we are passing valid credentials, right? And we are expecting it to be successful. So it is successful. Then what we'll say? We'll say the test case has passed. And we are passing valid credentials, but it failed, right? But it failed. It has to pass and it has to enter into the my account page. But it is not to our expectation, but it failed for some reason. Then we have to fail the test case, right? So these are all the different combinations we need to cover when we are writing the validation, right? So let's go back. Let's go back to our code and put this logic here. We'll not have this. So we'll write a separate validation. So if expected value. So if you see, we even got the expected value here, right? So how did we get that from here? The third cell, right? So the third cell has this RES, we are reading as expected result. And this is what we are validating of, valid and invalid. No, expected dot equals ignore case. I'll use equals ignore case because you might be using something like this valid, right? So it doesn't consider the case. But for now, we know this is uppercase. Let's put it like this and then observe now carefully. So this is simple logic. So you can just follow this, whatever we discussed, right? So it comes under the first case, login valid. And if it is successful, we have to mark it as false, right? So if you see here, this target page, what does it do? So we clicked on the login button and once we are onto the my account page, right? So once we are onto the my account page, so my account page dot is my account page exists. When you call this is my account page exists, so if it is a successful login, the target page will be true, right? So the target page will be true. So again, I will write a condition and we'll say that target page, if it is true, is what we are seeing. It will be true once we are into the my account page. So when we will be into the my account page, when we pass the valid credentials, and if it is successful, then you are into the login page or my account page, right? So in that case, we can say what we need to do, we just need to, we know that we are onto the target page. So that is confirmed, right? As we are onto the my account page. Like how did we validate that? We created an object, my account page object, and my account page dot is my account page exists is what we test. So if you see here, is my account page is actually returning the is displayed or not. My account header, is it displayed or not? And if it is displayed, so meaning we logged it successfully. So this target page becomes true, right? So that we are validating here. If our expectation dot equals ignore case is valid, then we know that it has to be passed, right? So that is what we are verifying. If it is passed, so that first one, the first case here, right? So login valid, and if it is successful, then we have to mark it as pass, right? So let's do that. My account page dot. So we know that it is passed. So we need to write the assert. So before that, we need to click logout. So we need to click logout because once you write the assert, the below statements will not be executed, right? So then we'll write the asset true equal to true. We can mark it to true. So we are passing the test case. Simple. First combination we are doing here, right? So login valid and it is successful. So we are marking it as pass. Login valid and if it is successful. How do you know it is successful? If target page is true. So what is target page? My account page dot is my account page exists. So when do you get this is my account page? Once you log in successfully, you get this page. The target page will be true. So target page, if it is true, means it is successful login. If it is valid and if it is successful, if it is valid and if it is successful, mark the test case as pass. That is what we did. So we did this as a second statement. So usually we need to mark it and then we need to click logout. But once you write the asset statement, so it will not actually execute the statements after that, right? So always asset will be the last statement. So that's the reason we logged out. We logged out first. Why we are logging out? So we are successfully logged in. So we get the logout link. So we click on logout in order to test the next set of test data. So once we click on the logout, right? So what happens? It will actually pick up the next set of test data, right? But we wanted to cover all these combinations in the validation, right? What if you passed valid credentials, but if it is failed, right? You need to fail the test case. So the same part, it is valid. So we'll be in the same loop, right? But if the target page is false, right? So what do we need to do? Else part we need to write. And what do we need to write? We pass the valid credentials, right? But the target page is not true. If it is true, it is successful. We mark it as pass. Asset true is true. But if it is failed, right? Else part is failed. Target page is false. So we pass the valid credential, but it failed. So this, so that is not our expectation. It has to pass, right? So what we'll do is we'll pass it as false, asset true as false. This actually marks our test case as fail, right? So this is first combination. If you see here, so valid credentials successful, we marked it as pass. Valid credentials it failed, so we marked it as fail. Now, let's come to the second combination. We log in. If it is invalid credentials and if it is successful, then we have to fail it. If it is invalid and if it is failed, fine. That will mark it as pass. So that will do it now. So this is valid part, right? You can write the else part to it, or for more clarity, you can write another if loop. No issues. If dot equals ignore case is invalid is what you can verify. Just the opposite of above, right? Equals ignore case invalid. Yes, it is invalid. What we wanted to check successful and failure, right? So let's do that. If target page. If target page equal to true, right? So let's go back again. Invalid, successful, right? So you see invalid, successful. So how do you know successful? If target page is true, it is successful. Just assume. So let me put it here, successful login, right? So successful login, I'll even have it here. But if you observe, these are invalid credentials. So it should not be successful login, right? It has to fail. But it actually passed. So in that case, what do we need to do? We need to asset dot asset true, asset dot asset true. We need to fail the test case because we are expecting the test case to be failed. That is unsuccessful login, but it is successful. So you are marking it as fail, asset true as false, right? No. And also your successful login, right? So you need to click on the logout in order to go for the next test data, right? My account dot click logout. So if it is invalid, so this combination invalid and it is failed, right? So this is our expectation. We pass invalid credentials and it is failed. So that is our expectation. So we'll mark it as pass. So in order to pass it, asset dot asset true of true. We'll mark the test case as passed, right? So we have, if you observe, so we have covered all these four combinations in the validation. So that is how, so first you need to write it down on a paper or somewhere like this, what we have to validate. And this is how you need to develop the logic, write the logic for the validations, right? Hope it is clear. So we are like almost done creating the test case. And in the exception, we can just say asset fail, or you can just add something like, this is try catch block, right? So you can just say like an exception occurred and you can just pass it as some message here, e.get message, right? So this we copied it from the login test too. So I'll just say login test, login, data driven test. All right. So we are completed, right? We are completed the test case. Now, how do we run it? Run this. We need to open the master XML and we need to have this. So I'll just clear this. And we need to pass the class here. I'll comment this. And what's the class name? Test case 3. Better you copy it from here. All right. So this is how you need to run it, because we have parameterized it, right? We parameterized the base class, if you remember. So let's run this now. It has to run for this test data. So it has to run it for 5 times. So the same test case, right? So it has to run it for 5 times for all the sets of test data, which we mentioned in the Excel sheet. So what did we do? We read the data from Excel sheet into the data providers class, and we refer the data providers class in our actual test case. See the first test case, it is passed, right? So it logs out. It is so fast. So the second one is invalid and it is failed, right? And it waits for 10 seconds because I think we kept the implicit wait as 10 seconds. So it will wait for 10 seconds. Yeah, it goes for the third input, fourth input fail. Again, wait for 10 seconds. Then the fifth input. That's it. It failed again. Now let's analyze the results. So let's analyze the results. So if you see, there are 3 pass and 2 fail, right? So why 2 fail? So if you open the Excel, so we said this this is the actual valid one, valid credentials, right? So these are invalid credentials, and invalid matches invalid. So invalid, these are the invalid ones. It failed, right? So this is true. This is passed. But if you observe third one, so we do have the actual, this is valid credentials. So I have created this email and with this password, right? So before this session, I just created this email and this password. So what should happen in that case? So this is valid, right? But intentionally I provided it as invalid, right? So that what should happen? It has to fail, right? So that's the reason there was one failure. And this was not there, the fourth input. So the email ID and password combination doesn't exist. So I mentioned the expected as invalid. So it failed and it is passed, right? And the last one, so it does exist. So I created this one, right? So it does exist, the last input, and I have provided it as valid, right? So I provided it as valid. So it is passed, right? So 3 pass, 2 failures. One second. Let's go back. So what are the failed ones? David is failed and Mahesh is also failed, because I think, yeah, this is not there. This is not there. So, but I still mentioned it as valid. So I wanted to cover all the combinations, right? So this is our first combination, valid and pass, right? So next, valid and failed. So this will be the valid and failed. So, right? So this is valid. So, but it failed. It failed, right? So that's the reason it actually marked as one failure. And the next combination, invalid and failed. This is fine. Invalid and failed. This is also fine. So 3 test cases passed. But this is, we mentioned it invalid, but the third set of data is actually logged in successfully. But we are expecting invalid, right? So this is also failed. So 3 failed. So 2 failed and 3 passed, right? So if you observe, so let me open this. So the first one is valid and passed, right? Second one is invalid and failed. That is also passed because we are expecting invalid and it failed. So we marked test case as passed. Observe the third one. So we marked it as invalid, but it actually, the login was successful because those were the valid credentials, but we are expecting invalid, but it was successful. The login was successful, but we are expecting invalid. So there is some difference between what is expected and what the actual result was. So we need to mark that test case as failed. So we mark it as failed. and the next one. So the fourth one. So those are the invalid credentials, and the expectation is also invalid. So the test case failed. That's according to our expectation. So we marked the test cases partially, right? And the last combination. So these were not there. So these were the invalid credentials, but we were expecting valid. So the expectation is valid, right? But it failed, right? So fail versus what is expected is valid. So again, there is a difference. So the test case got marked as failure. So two test cases failed and three passed, right? So this is how you can actually, pass the test data to your test method, and then you can validate. So you need to be careful what is expected, and how you actually mark your test case pass or failure, right? So you need to develop the logic in such a way that you actually mark the test case pass or failure according to the logic or according to the input which you provided in your Excel sheet, right? So this is all about like this step. I think we are done with the sixth step. Is that clear? Perfect. So let's jump on to the next one. So grouping tests. So how do you group the tests? So we have seen this when we are actually discussing about the TestNG feature. So we can group the tests and run it from the TestNG XML. So the first step, add all test cases into specific group. So let's go back. So I wanted to add all my test cases into some groups. So how do we do that? So first test case, I wanted to add some groups to it. So where it is? Yeah, here it is. So the annotation. So here we need to add the groups. Groups equal to. So I will pass it as some regression. This is my regression. And then login test. So here I'll mention the group as this is login, right? So this will come under sanity. So I'll mark it as sanity. All right. Now we need to mark this base class, right? So TestNG considers only the group when you mention sanity, right? So, but you are extending base class, right? So, base class in the sense, whatever base class methods are there, so that will be available to this test case as well, right? But when you are not mentioning the group to it, right? So, it will not be considered for execution. Though it is an annotation which has to be run once for the class, before class, like the setup method, after class teardown method, but still that will not be picked up by TestNG, but if because that method is doesn't belong to the group we specify in the TestNG XML. So what we need to do here is we definitely need to mention the group for the base class methods as well. Like this is before class, right? So what we need to do is we need to mention the groups to it as well. So group equal to sanity as well as regression. We need to mention both because it needs to run for every test case, right? So irrespective of sanity or regression, it has to run for all the test cases. So I have mentioned both sanity and regression. All right. Now we need to mention it for after class as well because we wanted to run this method as well for each test case, right? So this is how we can group our test cases, right? So I'm not grouping the test cases for this last test case because it will take some time. So let's take as an example only two test cases. So one is my regression test case and another is my sanity test case. And the methods, dependent methods also we wanted to actually run. So what did we do? We just had these methods also included into groups, right? All right. Now, if I wanted to run all the test cases, right? So I can mention both include name equal to sanity and regression. But in some cases, say for example, I wanted to run only sanity, right? So in that case, I can just mention in TestNG XML to run only sanity. That is fine. It will run, right? But what if like I wanted to run all the test cases? So then we need to write all the group names, right? So in this case, we had only sanity regression. There could be multiple group names in real time, right? So we have to include all those. Instead of that, what we can do is for every test case, so every test case belongs to something called master suite. So master suite is what we'll call it as. We'll have one common group name here for all the test cases, which we call it as master. So in some cases, if you wanted to run all the test cases, right? So you can just mention this group name as master so that all the test cases get executed irrespective of the group. But in some cases, like if you wanted to run specific test cases, then we'll call those group name with group name, right? So that's about it. And yeah, you can even mention the groups or test case 3 as well. Like here, you can mention it groups equal to like this, but I'm not doing it because if I include something here, so this test case will also be executed, and actually this might take some time, right? So I'm not including it. You can later test it by including either sanity or regression. So this is how you group it. So we have groups now, right? Sanity group and regression group. And we have added some common group name master so that all the test cases will be picked up when we use this group name, right? Now, what do we need to do? We need to create an XML file, right? So I'll create a copy of master.xml and I'll call it as grouping. So let's go back. So add all test cases into specific group, sanity, regression, master, right? So this is done. Also add base class methods, setups and teardown to all groups. Yeah, this is important, right? So otherwise TestNG will not pick up the setup and teardown methods for execution. So we added groups for this base class methods as well for setup and teardown. This is done. Now create separate TestNG XML file, grouping.xml to run groups and include groups which we wanted to execute. Yeah, we'll do that now. So where is our grouping.xml? Here it is, right? So what we need to do, we need to include our groups, what groups we wanted to test for, right? So everything will be the same. Only thing will be like, we'll after the parameters, right? Maybe we can include our group here. I'll just say groups. And then run is another tab. And then within it, we'll say include what we wanted to include. I wanted to include name equal to, so whatever I wanted to test, right? Sanity. Say for example, we wanted to test sanity. Only sanity test cases we wanted to run. That's it. Like this, you can mention and you can just run it. That's all, right? So it is anyway login data driven test. Okay. We wanted to remove this, right? So this is not part of any group. So you can put it or you can remove it. All right. So now we have test cases, 3 test cases. So according to the groups, so this has to be picked up, right? So sanity has been tagged for only one. I think it is for login test. So only that test case has to be picked up. So let's see that now. So only thing you need to do is create like this groups and run and then include name. You can even have the exclude name as well. So if you wanted to exclude something, right, you can even include that. Exclude name equal to like this. If you wanted to exclude some group. So if it could be part of sanity, but that should not be part of some particular group, then we can mention it like this here. So for now, I'm not mentioning anything. Let's actually run this and verify. So from all these test cases, 3 test cases, whichever has the group name as sanity, that test case should be picked up and that has to be ran. So if you see it launched and it has to execute login test because login test has been tagged as sanity. It clicks on my account, login. Yeah, correct. Right. So it ran successfully. Right. Login. So the login test has been picked up. Right. So how do you know that only one input got executed? Right. So that's how you can identify. And also you can see sanity here. Right. So that's how it was picked up. And now if I wanted to execute it for regression test cases, right? So you can just copy it and mark it as regression, specify regression, and then you can run it. Only regression test cases will be picked up. So what are the regression test cases here? only first test case we mark it as regression. So the first test case, which is account registration test, will be picked up and it will be executed. So this is how you can control what test cases you wanted to run. So in real time also there will be like tons of test cases. So each test case we have to give some group name, and based on the group names, we can control what has to be executed from the TestNG XML. And you can see this has passed, right? So it has picked up only. So you can see validate account registration. This test case has been picked up because that test case has the actual group name as regression. Now, what if I wanted to run all the test cases? So what we can do is for that, we can just mention it as master. So master, whatever tags we have for master, so that will be picked up. What happened? It actually skipped. Start logger is null. Actually documentation or but this is not what we wanted, right? So when we say master, it has to execute this. Say one more time. It is failing, and yeah, null pointer exception cannot. At 16th line it is base class, right? So base class. Okay. So this we are getting because the WebDriver is already there, and this is extending this, right? Extending base class, and base class has sanity regression. Okay, got it. So sanity regression, and we didn't include master to it. This also has to be master. See, this kind of issues we'll get it. So because it doesn't have the setup method, so the setup method was not able to run, but we are still using. So only when you run the setup method, you will get the driver instance initialized, right? But we are using the driver instance to call the actual methods. But this method was part of master, right? So as we said, like the even the before class and after class methods has to be part of master, all the groups. Any group name you provide, so that has to be given for this before class and after class as well. Now if we run this, it should work. So all the only test method. So only test methods will be picked up. But still you need to mention the group name for all the methods. So before class and after class methods also you need to specify the groups, but those will not be considered as the test methods because TestNG only considers @test as the test methods, right? But it will execute, but while picking it as a group, it will expect the group name for all the methods. That you need to remember. Yeah, the first test is done, registration. The second test case is running now, the login test. So this is how you can control the test cases with grouping, right? So from the TestNG XML itself, if you have the group specified for the test cases, you can control the execution. What test cases has to be executed and what has to be excluded. Yeah, login test is also done. And this time you can see two test cases are passed, right? All right. So this is all about grouping. Yeah. Create separate TestNG XML file and include groups which you want to execute. Yeah, we did this and we completed this step grouping test. So is that clear? All right. Now let's jump on to the next step. Add extend reports to project. So extend reports also we have seen, right? So we'll go through this very quickly. So add extend reports to project. Create extend report utility class under utilities package, right? So this utilities package com.opencard.utilities package, right? So let's have this extend report utility. So like how we had extend report utility, right? So that the same one we'll get it and have it in the utilities package. So this is our extend report manager, right? Yeah, we'll come to this. We'll come to this later. So for now, yeah, you can see here. This is our extend report. So when we are generating extend report, right? So what do we usually do? We make it as a listener class, right? So that this will be called automatically when a test case is passed, when before any test is get started, or on failure, on skip, on success. So we'll have all these methods, right? So when we actually implement the test listener, we'll get this methods, right? So that we'll actually write it in the extend report utility itself, right? So we are linking or associating both listener and the extend report because we need to generate the report on like on test success, on test failure, if the test case is skipped, right? Before start, after completion, everything, like we wanted to report everything, right? So that's the reason we are actually putting our listener as the extend report in the extend report manager. So implement site test listener with which we can implement all these methods, on start method, right? On test success method, on test failure, all these methods. So this will be our listener class. In the listener class itself, so we are actually making that as a report, right? Extend report manager. So let's go through this. So these three classes, extend spark reporter, extend reports, extend test. So we need to create the object for this. So same as like how we have seen when we are discussing about the extend reports, right? So the only new changes, let's discuss. So if you see here, so there will be multiple reports generated, right? So when I run now today, uh, so I'll be generating a report, right? Say for example, in the same day after an hour, if I run it again, then what happens if we hard code the reports, right? So if I specify the report name as like my report or automation report, right? So in that case, what happens is, so that will be overridden when I run it for when next time, right? So, but we wanted to preserve all the reports. So how do we do that? So in that case, we need to name our report, right? Name our report. The report name has to be unique. So how do we make the report name unique? So for that, we are writing a simple logic here. So whenever we wanted to write some uniqueness, right? We wanted to get some uniqueness. So we usually use the timestamp. Remember that. And you can see the logic here. So simple date format is a class where we can specify the date format. You can see year, month, date. This is hours. We need to even specify minutes and seconds as well. So at the same time, there could be multiple tests ran, right? So where we can see this. So when we wanted to run the on multiple machines or multiple tests, right? So in that case, we wanted to generate reports. So at the same time, that will be started, right? So in that case, like we might even need the seconds as well, right? So this is the format we are having. And then date actually, so date is a special class which actually gives us the date, current date, right? So with this, what we can do is we can use this format df dot format of date. So when we pass the date to this simple date format, so the date will be written. So the date will be written in this format. So this current date timestamp will have the current date in this format finally, right? So this we can use it and we'll append it to our report name. We can name our report something and then we'll actually append this, append this to our uh, report name, right? So the same thing, we can write it in a single step as well. So if you see here, df dot format of dt. What is df here? So df is actually representing this whole part, right? So it is replaced with this. And then dot format we have it. And then dt. What is dt? New date, right? So dt is new date. So that we replace it here. So this is the reason we can comment this out. And we can have this in single line. Now we have the format, timestamp format, right? Now we'll use this to name our report. So now we are naming the report. All this we are doing to have a unique name for our report. Remember that. So now we are naming the report as test report, or we can say it as automation report, anything, any string, right? Hyphen, then followed by timestamp, which will be unique, right? Dot HTML will be our extension for the report, right? So this is how we are naming our report, right? And then where we wanted to put this report under dot. Dot indicates the current directory, right? Slash slash reports folder. So I wanted to place this report, right? So we constructed this report name. So the report name is here, right? Test report hyphen timestamp. Timestamp, we are getting it with this logic. Dot HTML. And we wanted to place it in the reports. So we are using the Spark reporter object for that. Spark reporter is an object of extend Spark reporter, right? All right. So we specified the location where the report has to go, okay, and with what name it has to go, right? Fine. That is fine, right? Then Spark reporter dot config set document title. So we are setting the document title and report name. So we are seeing the difference. What is document title and report name? We'll also see that now in few minutes, right? And we can set the theme. We can set the theme dark and standard. Next, we need to create the extend reports. So extend reports object, we already have it. So we created an object for extend reports, and we'll use this for providing some common information. Common information like, and also this extend, you need to add, call the method attach reporter, and we need to attach this Spark reporter. Only then you will get these properties, right? So that will be the first step. And then we'll call set system info. And set system info is a key value pair. You can put any key and any value here. This information, whatever we are putting here, this will be displayed in the report as is. So this is a common information just for our reference, right? So application is open card, module you can specify, right? Submodule like this, right? So, and then username. So you can get the username with the system property. So when you say system.get property, user.name, so the current user who logged into this mission, right? So the user directory name, right? So that will be returned. And environment. So what's environment you are running on, right? So that the common information will be displayed on the report. All right. Now the important part, test context. So what is a test context? When a test starts, right? So it actually returns. So when this onStart method will be called, so this will be called automatically. Why it is called automatically? Because this is a listener, test listener. So you have to link this. You have to remember this link, right? So this is a test. This class is a listener class because it is implementing test listener interface, and it has some methods which will be called automatically. So when the test execution starts, so when test execution starts, onStart method gets called automatically, and when it is called, it actually passes the test context to it. So test context is the whole test context. So it's about all the tests, right? So the test context object, we have it. So we are using the test context object to get some information. What the information we are getting, observe here. So get current XML test. So get current XML test is, well, let me open master.xml. So say for example, this was our XML file. So it will get all this data when we say get current XML test, right? So get current XML test is this. So go back, get current XML test, dot get parameter. So under it, do you have any parameters? Yes, we do have parameters. Yeah, we do have some parameters. So it has names. So with that names, we can actually get it. Get parameter of OS is what we are seeing. So with this, what happens? So when you are running with this XML file, so get property of name, right? So OS name, the value of it will be displayed. This will be written, right? When we say get parameter of OS, the value of OS will be written here. Test context is this test context, this test, and get current XML test. In that, I need get parameter. I need parameter OS. When we say get parameter as OS, so it will get the value. So OS is a key here, so we'll get the value. Whenever there is a properties, right? So as a key value, so to get the value, we always get the key. We always need to pass the key as a parameter to get the value of it, right? So that's like in generic. So here also the same applies. So get parameter of OS actually returns us the value of it. So value of the OS. OS in the sense operating system. That is what we are doing here. Extend dot system set system info the operating system. So what is my operating system? OS. So we are getting that into a string object. This value, right? In our case, it will be Windows. So when you if you run master.xml, right? So that will be Windows. This can be anything. This could be Linux, Unix, anything. Whatever you pass here, that will be captured here into OS and that will be set here in the system info. This will be displayed in the report. And the browser, same goes for the browser as well. So we pass two parameters, right? Browser as well as operating system. So get parameter as browser will return us the browser name. So that we are displaying it in the report. Next, this is again important. Test context dot get current XML test is fine. Now, if you see get included groups, so from the XML file, TestNG XML file, we can even get the included groups as well. So when we say get included groups, so where is our grouping.xml here? Yeah. So whatever group names we specify, include name equal to sanity, include name equal to master, include name equal to regression, and so on. You can include number of entries, right? So all these groups will be captured here. So that will be, so when we call this method get included groups, all those included groups will be returned. So those are multiple groups, right? So we need to capture that, give them into list of strings. So included groups is a list of strings, which are part of inclusion, right? Whatever are included here. So whatever starts with include the and name, so these will be written here. So, and those are captured as a list of strings and those will be captured in included groups, right? All right. And now we are saying if it is not empty, if the groups are not empty, so included groups might be empty even, right? So you might not specify anything here. You might not even specify the groups tag, right? So if you run it, so in that case, that will be empty, right? So that's a condition we are saying. If that's the condition, so we are specifying the negation of empty. That is, if it is not empty, is what we are specifying. Then in that case, so display my group names. How we are displaying groups, and then we are using included groups, which is a list of strings dot toString. It will actually display it as a list of strings, the groups. So it will mention groups as the key. So it will display this as is the name groups, and then the actual value of the included groups, which are displayed as a list of strings. So that's the meaning of this. This is all about on start. So once we start the test, so all this will be displayed on the report. At least all this will be prepared to be displayed on the report, right? And coming to on test success, once the test case is passed, right? So you can see the test result. So the test result will be passed. So using this object result, we'll get the test class name. So earlier we used to have the get method, right? So get name. So get name actually returns you the actual test method name. But now we wanted to get the test name itself. Test name in the sense, say for example, this one, account registration, right? So the class name of it, this name we wanted. So how do we get it? So from the result, we need to call a method called get test class dot get name. So that we'll get the actual test name. And we wanted to create the test with the test class name, right? So that's the reason we are actually passing result dot get test class dot get name. So with this, we wanted to have an entry in the report. So when we say create test using extent object, we'll get an entry in the report. And what name that entry has to have is what we passed here. Earlier, we used to pass it as a test method. Now we pass it as the test class name, right? And then assign category. So we can even assign the category. So we can group, we can within the report itself, we can assign the categories for the test methods. So see result dot get method. So what this method group is what we can get groups. Actually, it displays the groups in the report, right? And it will assign the category to it. Say for example, this method, right? One of this. So any method, if it is successful, so the result object will be called, will be passed, right? So when we say result dot get method, that method groups will be written here, right? Those method groups will be assigned as a category when we call the assign category method, right? And then we are logging it something like test.log. So status is passed and the result.get name, the method name. So we are seeing got successfully executed. We wanted to write this as a log in the report. So this is all for on test success. So when a test method is successful, right? When a test case is successful. Now coming to on test failure. Again, this is important. So extend create test. So this will create a new entry. This way saw, and it will have the name as a test class name and as in category the methods. So whatever groups the methods has, so that will be assigned as a category. So we'll see that when once we generate the report, you'll get the clarity on this. What we mean by assigned category. So it's just a grouping of the methods as categories, right? So we'll see that anyway. Then see test.log. So status will marking as fail because this will be called only when the test case is fail. Status.fail. Result.getName will return the test method. We are saying it got failed. And we wanted some info why it failed, right? So we are using getRobot.getMessage. So that this information is also important for us. Why it failed, right? So that we are getting and displaying it as a log. All right. Now observe. So on test failure, we wanted to capture screenshot, right? So how do you capture the screenshot? Now observe. We wanted to capture screenshot and this method will put it in the base class. So we'll put it in the base class so that this will be available. This capture screen method will be available for all the classes, right? Because while execution itself, the capture screen method has to be available for the test case, right? So we'll create this capture screen method in base class. So let's go to the base class and we'll actually write some, code to capture the screenshot. So here is the method. Capture screen, right? Simple date format. Date. You can import it from java.util and take screenshot from org.selenium package. Take screenshot as well. That's it. Now observe the capture screen method, right? So why we wanted to have this? So why we wanted to have this is new base class. Okay, we need to import this. Let's go back to base class and we added capture screen. So capture screen method will be available for all the test cases because base class will be extended by each test case, right? So that's the reason we are capturing the screen. Now observe. So what we are passing here, new base class dot capture screen of result dot get name. So we are passing the method to it, test method to capture screen method, right? So this method will be called. This method will be called, and so when we wanted to capture the screen, only upon test case failure, right? So that's the reason on test failure we are capturing the screenshot. So how we are capturing the screenshot? We are calling the capture screen method, which is written in the base class, so that this will be available for all the test cases, right? So now what we are doing, simple date format, right? Simple date format. We wanted this simple date format. Why we are getting this format again is, so there could be n number of screenshots, right? So each screenshot should have unique name. So that's the reason we are having simple date format dot format of new date. So this we have seen for the report name as well. So we'll get the timestamp. And this is the code to take the screenshot, if you remember. So this is how we take the screenshot, right? Take screenshot is an interface, and then yeah, it's an interface, and so we are actually typecasting our driver to it and take screenshot dot get screenshot as some output dot file. So right, so output dot file. So this is a file. So this will be taken the screenshot and we'll get a file object. So this will call it as a source file. Now we need this to be placed in some specific location. Where we wanted to place this is system.get property of user.directory. Again, the current user directory, right? That is, in this case, the project, our project, right? Slash slash, or you can just put it as dot slash also. So both are same in this case, right? So screenshot is a folder, right? So you can see the folder here, screenshots. In the tname is what we constructed. Sorry, tname is the actual test method name. So screenshot plus test method name underscore timestamp. So timestamp is what we constructed here, right? In this format. .png. PNG is the extension of the image. Screenshot will be an image, right? So this is how we constructed the target file path. Now we'll create a new file. We wanted to create a new file, right? With the target file path. So this file we wanted to create. So this is just a mentioning of path, right? So we are constructing the file path here, right? So this file path, we are using it to create the actual file. So when we say new file, the file will be created, right? So the file will be created at this place. Now we will rename this source file. Source file is the actual place where we had the screenshot, get screenshot as some file, right? So source file is the actual file object where we had the screenshot. Now we are renaming it, right? Now we are renaming it to target file. So target file is this path, this name. Under screenshot, we had this name, right? So this name will be target file. So when we place this target file path, right, under new file, so we'll get the actual file name. After creation, it returns the file name. So that file name, we are passing out to the source file. Source file dot rename to target file. So we have taken a screenshot. Fine. So rename that file with this name is what we are saying. So what is this name? So whatever we pass in the target file path, the file will be created is what we are seeing with the file path, right? So within that, this will be created. So test name underscore timestamp. So that will be created, right? That will be the file created. So that with that name we wanted this screenshot is what we are seeing with this code, right? Source file dot rename or my target file to this one is what we are saying. So with this name, we'll get a screenshot finally under screenshots folder. And we are writing this target file path, right? So we already have the created the screenshot into that screenshot folder. Now we need this target file path return. Why we need this? If you go back, so new base class dot capture screen. So result dot get name. So we need this image path. So because we wanted this image, which is a screenshot, to be part of our report. So this is the reason we are actually having all this code in the listener or extent report, right? On test failure, what happens? So on test failure, we wanted to capture the screen. All right. So why? So capture screen, we are putting it into the base class so that it will be available for all the test cases. And also why we are doing this is we wanted to the captured screenshot, we wanted to add it to the report. So image path, right? So image path will be written the target file path where the image is present, right? So that image path we'll add it. There is one method called add screen capture from path, and we can pass the path to it. So that this test, right? The test, what is the test? Extended create test. This particular test, so it will include this screen as well, this screenshot as well. So that's the meaning of this, right? So this is all about it. And new base class, yeah, this is what it is. And yeah, you can go. So this is all about on test failure. On test script is simple. You will get an entry, then we'll assign the category to it by calling the get groups, and we'll just log it as skipped, status as skipped, and we'll provide some information. Even the skip test cases will have some exception, right? That we are printing in the log. And on finish, this is important. So extend, so extend dot flush. So only upon calling this, everything which we prepared for the report will be written onto the report. So once that is done, so this is all like optional thing. So this is optional. So we'll go through this quick. So path of extend report, system.get property, reports. Under reports, we wanted to get the report, right? So we already have the report. So once you do extend.flush, we already have the report here with the report name, right? With this report name we wanted, we calling it as path of extend report, and we are actually creating a file object for it. So why we are doing this is once we have the file object extend report, so these are all optional. Okay. So desktop dot get desktop dot browse extend report dot to URI. So what this happens, what this does is this code, this piece of code, it actually opens the report. So once your test case is done, so what you usually do, you refresh the report folder, and then we'll actually open that reports in a new we'll right click on it and we'll say open with system editor, right? So that part you don't need to do it. Once the test case is run, so automatically the report will be opened in your browser. That's the code of this. So for that reason, we have the this code. So this is optional. And then so once you have the report, right? So we actually optionally we can send this report to the email, right? So how do in real time also we will send that. So once all the test cases are executed, we actually attach the report and send it to a group of people, right? So here it is URL, where we create an URL object, and then, image HTML email. So in order to get this, so URL java.net, image HTML, we need to get it from MVN repository, and then we just say email, commons email. Yeah, this is what we did. 164. So this is the dependency. So I will add it to my pom.xml. We need this to send the email. So once we have this, right, we need this dependency to send the email. Now we'll get the option to import. The import image HTML from org.apache.commons.make. All right. You can even import all these others, right? So this is how you can send the email. So let's go through this code. So image HTML email, we'll create an object of it, and we'll use all these methods. So set data resource URL, your resolver, and we'll pass the URL to it. So yeah, we'll pass URL is simple. The file which we are pointing to the report, right? So that is that, and host name and port. So this will be our actual. So SMTP dot. This is for Gmail. For in your case, in real time, this will be your organization SMTP server, right? So mail server, and the mail server's port will be mentioned it here, and default authenticator will mention it here, and then set SSL on connect and set from. So who is sending this, and what's the subject, right? What's the message, and add to, right? And you can attach what we wanted to attach. You wanted to attach something here, right? So that you can attach it and then send. That's it. So that mail will be sent. For now, I'm not going to send it. So I'll just comment this out. Okay. You can do it when you wanted to set the server and port, right? Port and right port and server name, and then you can actually put it. So for now, I'll just call this as, I'll just mark it as, I'll just comment this out for now. Again, this might take some time. So I'll just mark it as like this, and then we'll run it till here. So is that clear? So all this, why we are doing, we are just mentioning it as we are actually preparing the report, right? We are preparing the report. All right. So once we prepare the report, so let's go back. Create extend report utility class. Yes, we created. Add capture screen method in base class, which we did. Add extend report utility listener class entry in TestNG. This we didn't do. So we'll do this. Make sure WebDriver is static in base class. We refer same driver instance in extend report utility. Yeah, this we need to do. And after that, we'll create the listener class. Make sure WebDriver is static in base class. So we need to make base class in the base class, right? In the base class. So where is our base class? Here it is. We need to make this static so that the same WebDriver is available. See, if you see here, so we need driver for this capture screen, right? So how will this capture screen? It needs driver, right? So if only if it is static, it will get the driver when you wanted to call it, right? Because extend reports is calling this on test failure, right? When it calls capture screen, so this driver needs to be initialized by that time, right? So only when you have this static, so the same driver will be used. The same WebDriver will be used, right? Otherwise, that will throw error. So that's the reason we need to make it a static. So because we are creating a new object here, right? So when you are creating a new base class, that will be a new object. So if it is not static, right? So that will be a new driver altogether. For that object, we need to initialize the driver. So we don't want it to do that, right? Because we created the new base. When we say new base class, so that will be a new object. So for a new object, the driver will be a new one again, right? So, but we wanted to use the same driver to capture the screen. So screenshot, right? So that's the reason we'll make the base class. In the base class, we are making this driver, WebDriver as static. If it is static, you don't need to create an object for it. You can directly use it with the class name, right? So that's the reason like we made that driver as static. So that's what this point is saying. And the next point is add extend report utility listener class entry in your TestNG XML file. Yeah, we'll create that. We'll create one XML file for that. So I'll take a copy of master, and or we can take a copy of grouping. We'll also have the grouping as well. And we can just say final. All right. Now what we'll do is we'll just run this. So before this, we need to add it as a listener, right? So let's add the listener part. What is our listener class? Extend report manager, right? Form.opencart utilities.export report manager. All right. So if you see here, yeah, we included some groups, parameters are there, test is also there. Okay, test has to be before the test. So this listener has to be before the test. Let's put it here. So we have the listener class. So this will take care of the listener, right? So maybe you can name this as open card test. You can remove the thread count for now. Parameters groups, right? Master in the sense like all the test cases will be executed. All right. Now, yeah, we specified all, but this doesn't have any group, so this will not be picked up. So only these two classes will be picked up for execution. All right. So now let's execute this and verify. It has to generate the report and it has to open automatically. We have written the code for that as well, right? So let's see that. And again, you don't need to remember all the things for the report, section report utility, right? That's the reason we are using the already created utility class, right? Action report. So you don't need to worry on that. So you can use directly the same action report utility class in your project as well. Or if you already have the utility in your project, then you can just understand what's the code written in it. That's it. So this is like a one time for the project. And see, I didn't do anything. So the test cases are done. So it actually opened the report in the browser. And you can see the report here, right? So let me maximize it. So you can see here, two test cases, right? So, and you can also see the test case name. So the test case name now is the test case class. So earlier we used to have test method name. So now it is test class name, right? So test class name and how much time it took, everything is there, right? In the report. So this is here. So you can click on each test class method or test case and view the statistics of it. And you can see the document title, open cart automation, and the report name, right? Open cart functional testing. And going on to second one, so you can see the category. This is what I was talking about, assign category, right? So when we assign the category, so this is how the category will be displayed, like, right? So under master category, there are two tests, is what it is saying. Under sanity, one test. Under regression, there is one test, is what it is saying. So this is how this category, how we are getting it is. So if you go back to the extend report, so we had something here, right? So where it is, yeah, assign category. So this assign category method. So when we did this, so this is what we got, the category wise test cases, right? And then yeah, going to the graph. So when it started, when it ended, how many tests passed, how many failed, right? So all these timelines will be there. And the tags. So according to the tags, how many passed, how many failed, skipped, all those tags will be there here. And system dot get info, right? So we wanted to display something. So that's displayed here, right? All that information has been displayed in the report. All right. Now let's do one thing. Let's fail one test case. So I intentionally wanted to fail something. Like say for example, what I'll do is I'll take a copy of it. Small topic we'll discuss and we'll conclude. So now I'll pass some invalid password, right? And then I'll execute it again, the final XML. So that what happens, one test case has to pass, other has to fail, right? Now observe, login test has to fail because I provided incorrect password. Yeah, done. Right? Now login test. Login test has to fail because we provided incorrect passwords. So this will fail and the report has to be opened automatically. Yeah, it failed. It waits for 10 seconds and then it closes the browser and it reports the test as failed, right? Now we have the report open automatically. So you can see the report now. So one test failed, right? So one test case passed, second test case got failed. Now observe. So we had a screenshot attached to it. So if you click on that, so this is the screenshot. This is the screenshot, right? You can see the screenshot clearly, right? And this screenshot, so let's go back to the reports, right? So right click on it or right click on the project and refresh it. So you'll have the reports. You have the reports, two reports, and you can see the timestamp to it, right? So date, hours, minutes, and seconds are also there. Till now, we had executed two times, so we got two reports here. So you need to observe the timestamp here, naming convention here. So we appended timestamp, it is there here. And also go to screenshots. So just now one test case got failed, and you can see the test method name underscore the timestamp, right? So like this, whenever a test case is failed, right? So we'll get a screenshot with a unique name like this, right? And going back to our report, right? So you can see the report here. Okay, I think we closed that. So, but if you open with system editor, so you can see that one test case got failed and it has a screenshot of it. And it will also give you the information about the status it is failed and why it is failed. Login failed because it is expecting true, but it was false, right? Some information about it, right? And the test case passed and the categories of it. So even in the categories, how many failures are there? So the sanity test case has been failed. In the graph also, you can see that how many tests passed, how many tests failed, skipped, and all, right? So this is how we can generate the report. All right. Now, a test case has been failed. So how do you correct it? Say, for example, we have 100 test cases and some 90 test cases got passed and 10 failed, right? So now, how do you identify that? So this report is giving us the stats, fine. So it is saying that some test cases are failed. But we wanted to correct this. We wanted to know the information of this. Maybe we will find it in the logs or here we will write some information, right? Based on this, we corrected those test cases and we wanted to run only failed test cases. So in that case, how do you select them? So those will be part of sanity, master, regression, all the combinations, right? So how do you identify the 10 test cases and include only those test cases, right? So that's our that's what we wanted to achieve. So how can we achieve that? So that can be achieved easily with test output. So test output is again a folder generated by TestNG. So a default folder. So you can see here on refresh. So just refresh this. So you can see test failed here, right? So once you click on it, so you can see XML has been prepared for the failed test cases. See, open card test failed. And you can see what the included groups and class name also it says. This is what it actually prepares for us. So you don't need to do anything. You just need to open this TestNG hyphen fail.xml and just execute this. Before this, you need to correct. You need to fix your code, right? So you can just fix your code. So we fixed it. So we corrected the error. Now we just need to, we did not modify anything. We just open TestNG hyphen file.xml and we are running it. That's it. Like this, if 10 test cases are failed, n number of test cases fail, all those test case information will be there in the TestNG file.xml. You just need to open the XML file and run it. That's it. All the failed test cases will be rerun again. So make sure you fix those issues first and then rerun it. So next time, if some of the test cases are passed, those will be removed and testing the fail will have only the, at any point of time, it will have only the failed test cases information, right? Now see, it is passed, right? So it says, it opens the report and it says it is passed, right? Now, you need to remember this. So if I refresh this project, now what should happen usually in the test output? So even though you see the so open this test output, you see testng fail.xml, right? I refresh the project folder. So if I open testng fail.xml, you'll still see this. You'll still see this entry login test. So this is because that's the default behavior of testng. Until and unless next time, whenever any test case is failed, so this will not be overridden. This will be like this. So you should just ignore it once the all your test cases are passed, right? So you should not think that it is failed, right? So so the order is this. If a report says if a report contains any failures, then you will open the test engine failed XML and run those test cases after fixing those, right? Or else you can just ignore test engine failed.xml because it will always have the last run failed test cases information, right? So that's important. This will not be cleared. That's the default feature or functionality of how test engine works, right? So next time when you run it and when you fail some test case, so you can do it like, right? So you can go to your test case one and then you can fail this by adding something like this and then run the test case, right? So run the test engine XML or run the actual final.xml, then this will be failed, right? So that information will be put in this testng fail.xml. This will be overridden in that case. So the point to be noted here is, so this file will be overridden only in the next term when any test case fails. Or else this will be with the same data with the last test run failures, right? So that's what we need to remember. So this is all about it. So this is done, and we also covered this run fail test. So test output, test fail, testng fail.xml, right? So this is all about the project framework. So any questions? Is that clear? All right then. So you can practice this framework. So I strongly suggest you follow this document and step by step so that there won't be any confusion and you will not miss anything. All right then. I'm stopping here then.